Buongiorno e welcome bandidos. Welcome to this lesson on the Commedia dell'arte with me, El Dottore, para Universidad de Bologna, a place of much learning for you, my students. I hope you like all the many things I have to share with you, and if not, stay inside. It's too dangerous out there. Hi everyone, I am Scott Pafumi, and I am the theater arts teacher and director at Herndon High School in Herndon, Virginia, and I am so excited to share with you today this wonderful lesson on Commedia dell'arte. So far you've met a couple of my friends in the preview, El Capitano, and of course the very bombastic Il Dottore. So today I want to give you an overview of all the different facets and teaching pieces to the Commedia world. The best thing I could probably tell you in the opening here is that Commedia, of course, is the origins of improvisational theater. One needs not look too much further back in theater history than the 1500s, 1550s, thereabouts in Italy, to first trace the roots of Commedia and the family troupes that traveled all throughout Europe, developing characters and archetypes and plot-based scenarios that to this very day we are still using and stealing their scenes and their character dynamics and the relationships between the many characters. Today in this short workshop for our theater arts programs of Fairfax County Schools, I hope to be able to share with you some history and some practical knowledge that you can use in any of your character development, as well as a chance for you to see what these masks are all about. And I want to talk about these masks and where I got them and their origins and how I'm lucky enough to get to use them in my regular teaching. So I hope that you enjoy this very exciting lesson, and I'll try to keep it upbeat and full of information. Commedia dell'arte, of course, is an Italian phrase, words. It literally translates to the art of the comic guild, or the original first guild troops of players. And of course, today we think of repertory companies and ensemble-based theaters that use the same actors perhaps throughout an entire season of shows. The Commedia actors and family troupes of the 16th century were the first to sort of create this concept that an actor is not alone, that they belong to a greater company. So the Pafumi players might be a name of a troupe, or the King's Players, or the Traveling Zannis or something. They would have some sort of branded name that they were known by. And what was wonderful about being an actor in one of these troupes is that you actually grew up in the company. So you might start off as a young servant character with not a lot of knowledge and without a lot of training. And through your years of traveling with this Commedia company, you would, of course, get the experience you needed as an actor and even grow into other roles. So you might start off as a Zanni character and eventually become a young lover in your teen years, and then eventually perhaps one of the more significant master characters, which we'll get into. The characters in Commedia can be broken into three different categories. The top category would be what's called the Magnificos. The Magnificos are the master characters. They're the ones with all the money and all the influence and all the power. And of course, at the top of that food chain is Il Pantalone, El Pantalone. We of course know that that word translates both in Spanish and in Italian to pants. The reason Pantalone was called this is because A pantalone would be someone who could actually afford the fabric for a full legging of pants, perhaps made of silk or a fine material. Of course, in the Renaissance era of pre-Shakespeare and into the Shakespearean era, the typical garb would have been doublet and hose, which are those puffy pants with the tights. But a pantalone character would be in form-fitting long pants and very comfortable slippers, personal made for him, and probably a long cloak or cape. And his mask would be all about the eyebrows and the nose and the older hair. So he's Don Pantalone. So he's one, of course, of our Magnificos. Another Magnifico, of course, we met him earlier, is Il Dottore. Il Dottore is from the university and has studies in every subject imaginable. He could be a character that thinks he knows everything and could all just be full of hot air, or he could actually be very, very smart. Sometimes a charlatan where he's trying to sell something, or he's scheming or plotting to take advantage of the people in the town through his knowledge. Kind of a Harold Hill character, if you're familiar with that, from The Music Man, or The Rainmaker. So he is somebody who, the phrase is full of Bologna. I said that earlier. So Bologna is a city in Italy that is where most of the universities would be. And someone who is from Bologna or full of Bologna would be someone who's full of knowledge. We, of course, have changed that translation over the years here in America and others, and we say full of baloney, which would mean you're full of nonsense or you know, full of nothing. But that's the origin of that, and it's very interesting to know those roots. The other Magnifico character would be Il Capitano. Now, Il Capitano has a lot of different origins besides Italy. So far, our characters that we've been talking about are Italian, but a lot of times Il Capitano is from Spain, España, and is sort of our swarthy world-traveled character. He doesn't have to be from Spain. He could be from other countries. And he is full of himself. He's got a huge ego. He is could conquer anything with his fists, with his one finger, with his sword, and he loves himself more than anything in the world. Women adore him. Men want to be him. But there's always a character flaw with El Capitano that in the plot of a good story, we have to find out how to conquer or best him. He's often ridiculously afraid of something really minute like flies or bees or flowers or the color yellow or something. He always has some weakness that allows him to be bested, defeated. And in the face of a true conflict, he would probably run away. We see traces of Capitano in The Cowardly Lion, in The Wizard of Oz, or perhaps even Don Quixote, or any of our characters that we can imagine throughout history are full of themselves, but really when it comes down to it, they cower in fear. The next would be the Innamoratis. The Innamoratis, or Innamorati, are the young lovers. These are characters that are just as you would imagine. They're teenagers. And the most interesting thing about them and their mask is they don't wear a mask quite often. They are usually celebrated in the fresh beauty of the actor's face. Perhaps there would be some makeup applied, rosy cheeks, highlighting their eyelashes and things like that. But we often aren't going to see a mask on an Innamorati. And another side note about masks in a Commedia is that most characters, all characters who wear a mask in Commedia are hiding something. They are often not telling the full truth. And they are either in a plot of deception with other characters in the story or with the audience itself. Whereas the young lovers, the Innamorati, are completely 100% honest, to a fault. So they talk their feelings out expressively. They do not hold anything back in. both with how they feel to another character and even asides to the audience. It's very important to note that in the history of theater, Commedia is very much in the category of presentational theater, that which is no fourth wall, completely interacting and breaking with the audience, playing off of them and stealing things from them, or literally going out into the audience, sitting on their laps and doing bits. So the Inamorati are, like I said, often unmasked. Another character that we would find, and this is floating down into our third subgroup. So we have the Magnificos, which are the master servants, Pantalone, Dottore, Capitano. The middle group, which would be the Inamorati, and they are often of wealth or money. They don't have to be, but they do have influence and wealth from their families. They haven't perhaps come into their full wealth yet, but they might have a servant who attends them. The third category, of course, in that sort of socioeconomic status would be the Zani class. These are the servants. The servants are the heart and soul of any Commedia plot. Of course, the servant character, or the Zani, dates back to the Harlequin, or the first jester clown who would have served a royal king for entertainment. Most of us are very familiar with the history of the clown and the Harlequin with the diamond patched and the stick with the bells and the mask faced, or the white face. So those all sort of predate Commedia, that Zani servant clown, and then Commedia was built out of all of these clowning characters. Every character in a Commedia story is a clown, but it's about what level of character clown are they. So the Zanis are that. I want to actually start with this character because this is kind of a rare mask you won't find a lot, and this is Colombina. So Colombina is one of the Zanis. She's the sassy maidservant, kitchen wench. She's older, more experienced, wise. The nurse character in Romeo and Juliet would be an excellent example of a Colombina. And what's interesting about this mask is that we often don't see a mask on Colombina because, like the lovers, she is full of honesty and truth. She sometimes is the narrator to the story. She has a direct line to the audience in terms of the plot and what's happening. And we don't want to mask a character that must reveal the truth to us. All right, so this is Colombina, but again, often we won't mask a Colombina who is the sassy servant, maidservant. One of the sort of great characters is the sad Arlecchino. Yes, so Arlecchino is of a character type that he's a Zani. He will speak, sometimes not a lot. He's probably our biggest fool. He's very lovable because we all have a sad spot for Arlecchino's very sad plight. He gets himself caught up in situations where he must find a way to get himself a master to care about him, to pay him, to feed him. He might be on the streets quite often and begging for money, singing for his supper, and he wants to be hired. He is led by his stomach, and that is often a character piece of where he leads from, his stomach. Arlecchino, I want to note a little thing here. There's a little knot on the top of this mask, and this is sort of a budding start of what could be an homage to a horn. And so again, a little piece of theater history. If we go back to the Greeks and the Romans, we can go back to Dionysus in Greek theater, and of course Bacchus in Roman theater. Both of those characters were quite mischievous, and they were known for mixing and mingling with the mortals, and oftentimes lascivious affairs with the mortals. And so the men would sometimes be cheated on by the gods of Dionysus and Bacchus. And so to be cheated on by your lover is, of course, to be called cuckold. And a cuckold, in classic literature, all the way up through Shakespeare, would be someone who would sprout horns on their head that they may not necessarily see. And the rest of the characters in the play, and of course the audience, through dramatic irony, would know that character has been cuckolded, but they would not, and the horns would show that. What's a fun another historic little connection is, all those times we've been in pictures and our friends put the rabbit ears behind us to try to make fun of us behind our back and we don't know it. That's actually a historic reference to being cuckolded. And did you know that all those times in elementary school that you were doing that, you were making reference to your lover being untrue to you? So anyway, this is what that little bump might be an indicator of, is that Arlecchino has been cuckolded and he may not know it. Another classic character to Arlecchino would be Azani Brighella. Now Brighella is a much smarter Zani than Arlecchino. Brighella would have the opportunity to study in the master's house with the books, and they might have all the privileged information of the master. And a Brighella is always looking for an angle to outdo everybody, and perhaps even raise their social standing in the city or the town or in the player troupe itself. A Brighella would be played by a very crafty, very tricky actor, and would be always plotting and scheming tricks and trying to outdo, trying to kill your master by poisoning him, trying to steal money from others, creating a fictitious event that is all for the plight and gain of money. So he might actually, a Brighella might actually get good counsel from a Dottore who gives him all the wise training. The Pulcinella character might be a quiet or silent Zani who doesn't speak, or the white-faced clown that doesn't speak at all. So sometimes there's different levels of language with the Zanis. They might be silent, like complete mime, or they might speak only in gibberish to the audience, and others have to figure out what they're saying through their very physical action. Or, of course, like a Brighella, they're very crafty and smart, and they use their words to outsmart everyone. Masks that are made in Commedia, the noses, of course, are very significant. We all look at the noses. This is actually another Capitano. His name is Spavento, and as you can see, his nose is very elongated. One might even suggest phallic, which would not be a misrepresentation, because of course Capitano is very manly, and he is known for his pride of self and his boasting, his cockiness. So all double entendre is in play there. As a matter of fact, this particular Capitano was named by the mask maker Tres Huevos, which of course roughly translates into 3 eggs. Most men have dos huevos, but this Capitano is tres huevos. He's more manly and fertile than most men. I particularly like them. Let me just talk a moment about these masks. These are handmade by an expert craftsman named Newman, N-E-W-M-A-N. I've known of him for over 20 years as a mask maker. He is a tradesman who was trained by Italian Commedia craftsmen, and he has his very own mask making leather shop. He's actually in America. He's in California, I think somewhere up in Northern California, and he has a website. I highly recommend, if you're a theater educator or even as a student, if you're interested in checking out or buying a mask. Each one of these masks range anywhere from $125 to $175 because they are handmade. But on his website, he shows you all of the different Commedia characters and all the different faces that one could order. And it takes probably a couple weeks for him to get them out to you. And he's very personable. And then through his website, you establish an email correspondence, and you ask for what you want, and he'll give you an invoice and all the traditional ways you can pay him through online credit or sending him a check or money order. So I've in my many different schools and places I've worked, from both Fairfax County all the way up through Northern Virginia Community College, where I've taught several acting and improv classes, I've been able to use masks and order them, and then take them as part of my classroom teaching and workshop. So again, quick plug for Newman, the mask maker, Commedia mask maker. The cool thing about learning Commedia is, and through my slideshow presentation that you'll see here and all the history, one can definitely get a great overview of what is Commedia and how does it work in acting. But certainly this virtual workshop is only going to be able to give you the basics. The best training is hands-on, is your opportunity to actually take a movement class with a Commedia instructor, someone who is going to get you into all the different body positions that each character would be a part of their history. And then the other really finite work one must do is the work of the mask. Mask and trance is a very, very important piece to Commedia, and I actually just referenced a chapter in a book by Keith Johnstone, which is called Impro. And I highly recommend this book. I used to teach it when I taught at Nova. There's 4 chapters, and one of the chapters in it is on mask and trance, and it's Johnstone's, who's a British educator scholar, who uses Commedia in his improv teaching to talk about the discovery of the mask and how one connects with the mask before you even put it on. I will model this just now. Anytime a person puts on a mask, specifically a Commedia mask, it should never be done in the presence of the audience. You should turn away, you should turn your back or be off stage. My workshop teachers of the past have always said it's like removing your physical face in front of the audience, and that's a very scary thing. So I'm just going to move off camera here for a moment. So Arlecchino can be very expressive just from his face. And of course, the goal here is the half mask means that the lower half of the face is up to the actor to do the other part of the facial work. And it's important that the actor trains on how to wear that mask and adjust the face to it. One of the last kind of things I want to talk about is just the idea of a plot scenario. Each of these characters live in a world unto themselves. They have their very limited and restricted amount of things that they're able to do. The lovers will only ever be in love or only ever be completely depressed because they can't be with their love. Pantalone will always want money. He will always want power. He will always be one day away from death. He's the oldest character, an octogenarian, septuagenarian, right? He's in his 70s, his 80s, he's old, and he's, at any minute could be killed off. Capitano will only ever want what's best for him, and he will always boast and brag about what he wants and will always have some weakness or flaw that can be exploited. Columbina will always do her best to serve her master, especially if it's a female young ward that is in her care. She's very maternal, very protective, again to a fault, and would do anything for her. And she always has some background past of lost loves. Dottore always is going to pontificate, is always going to be full of lots of words and teaching and scholarly advice, some of it good, some of it awful. But he lives only in those parameters. He's often, too, can be a father figure or a widower. So he might be searching for love and gets himself involved in situations where he's fallen in love but doesn't quite know how to be in love anymore and goes looking for advice from others. The Zani characters are always the ones who solve the plot. They are the fool that speaks the truth. They are the promoters of the comic engine, and definitely are exploited by the masters in their class and rarely get credit for the fact that they figured most things out. So the plot scenario is important to the Commedia story, and in my slideshow PowerPoint, I'm going to leave you with these 4 stories that are just collected tales from books of Commedia. The scripts were never written in the land of Commedia. Unlike Shakespeare, there was no one writer that wrote all the stories down. All we have is sort of the passed down story of the oral tradition and people writing down the plots or the summaries of the story. The comic genius to a good Commedia, which is still 500 years later, is we still can use the Commedia plot and archetype and character in common comedy and making jokes on contemporary concepts. So Commedia, the Corona musical, would be perfect at this time. The Politico, Commedia de Politico, all about the upcoming race that's coming this year, would be fodder for anything in Commedia. So we're always going to use Commedia characters to poke fun at the establishment and to take contemporary references from the audience suggestion, which again goes back to why Commedia is so the origins of improvisation. And one last little thing I want to share here is my favorite teaching tool, the slapstick. I'm sure many of us have seen these before. This is actually a percussive instrument that is sold by companies like Ludwig or other percussion instrument music companies. So you can buy it actually from the county, Fairfax County's supply order under instrumentation. But it's just a simple little 2-board contraption, and it is designed to make sound effects of the slap. When we talk about slapstick comedy, this comes from the Commedia roots. You literally, the players, the clowns would walk around stage with paddles or slapsticks to create the sound of characters getting smacked or slapped. A lot of physical violence. Our modern day cartoons, Tom and Jerry, are a great allusion and reference back to the physical comedy of a Commedia characters and clowning, hitting each other or getting hit. It's a wonderful instrument to use when you're teaching and just for workshop purposes, when you want to get people to freeze or stop. This was used by Foley artists, of course, and far back as to when baseball games were radio games, and the announcer would pretend to make the sound of the smack of the bat and all that. So great to have a slapstick in your company. Of course, there's so many more things that I could teach in this workshop. The part 2 of this would be the hands-on, and we would get up and we would do movement and we would explore the physical characters beyond just knowing the history. And I would love to get to do that with any of you, whether it's in our workshop series or at VTA. I've taught the workshop Virginia Theater Association Conference, the Thespian Conference. I've come to individual schools and taught workshops, summer programs, Institute for the Art in the summers. I've taught this workshop, and of course my very own students over the last 25 years that I've been teaching have gotten a chance to learn about the roots of Commedia. I've even actually taught a Commedia workshop to a retirement center a couple years ago that brought me in to teach them about stylized character, and it was really fun teaching a bunch of 70 and 80-year-olds how to use their physical attributes in character comedy. So I will leave you with a last bit, which is called a lazzi or a lazo. A lazo is a comic shtick where the character develops a sense of a bit or a comic piece, and it's always what the audience looks forward to seeing. Capitano pulling his sword out from his belt and then his pants falling down. That would be a lazzi. For those people that used to study old classic television, the Dick Van Dyke Show, he would always enter the door and trip over the ottoman. That was his lazzi. Kramer on Seinfeld, the way he opened a door and came in every time, that was his lazzi. Laverne and Shirley, they used to you have a little thing when they saw somebody that they thought was attractive. So characters, bits that they always do. Carol Burnett tugging on her ear at the end of a show, which of course was a message of saying hello to her grandmother, I think. That was her lazzi or her lazo. Develop comic bits and put them into your shows. And I'm gonna leave you with one here.
Hello, it is I, El Morgan de Capitano. They say to never act with dogs and children because they will steal the show. Well, I think they are right. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.